Hey everyone, I'm Rick the Bookkeeper. Welcome. This video is intended to provide an overview, a 30,000-foot view, if you will, of QuickBooks Online accounting and bookkeeping software. This guided tour serves as a brief introduction to QuickBooks Online, or QBO, for small to medium-sized business owners who are not yet familiar with the cloud-based software and would like to learn more. We'll go into the QuickBooks sample company and take a peek at some of the key features, including the main menu, the dashboard, automatic bank feeds, categorization of transactions, invoice and expense tracking, and financial reporting, including profit and loss, balance sheet, and a few others. Please bear in mind that this is a high-level view of the cloud-based software. I'll be digging deeper and exploring many of the other features and benefits in subsequent videos on this channel. For instance, the next video will look at different versions of the QuickBooks plans, and the one after that will be on transaction categorization, followed by bank account reconciliation, and so forth and so on. Finally, as a bookkeeper, I almost exclusively use QuickBooks Online with my clients. I'm a QuickBooks Certified Pro Advisor, Level 1 and Level 2, which is the advanced level, and a payroll specialist. I do not work for and am not employed by QuickBooks or Intuit. Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen, and let's get this show on the road. Welcome to QuickBooks Online. We are currently in the QuickBooks Online sample company, Craig's Design and Landscaping Services. Let's start out by looking at the dashboard and a few of the main menus. Here's the dashboard. As you can see, some shortcuts, the system reminding you of a couple of tasks regarding some unpaid invoices and overdue bills. Here's a snapshot of your bank accounts, your P&L, and the P&L, of course, you can adjust it for whatever term you're looking for. This is very handy. And your expenses and invoices, the system is telling you, hey, you have $3,420 of overdue invoices and what's been deposited and not deposited. Here's some cash flow information, your sales trend, and your apps, and of course your accounts receivable and payables, and your mileage. If we go to the left-hand side over here in the dark shaded area, this is what I refer to as our main menu. We have bank transactions, which we'll talk about in detail in just a moment. We have other transactions, including bank transactions once again, so we can access that a couple different ways. We have sales information, which is invoices, estimates, sales orders, recurring payments, and so forth. We have our expenses, which are our bills, vendors, contractors, mileage, and the 1099 filings. And we have our financial reporting here, which includes balance sheet, profit and loss, and numerous other reports. Payroll, time tracking, budgeting, which is always a very good idea. Taxes, including sales tax, and then lending, banking, commerce, and once again the apps. Now let's take a walk back up to the very top of this menu on the left where it says New. If we go in here, you can see there's a list for customers, vendors, team, and other. Take a look at the customers. We have our invoice, sales orders, sales receipts, credit memos. This is essentially is where you go to create things, to, in this case, create a new invoice. We'll go over the invoicing and expenses in a future video in great detail. We'll go back to the menu. Vendors, these are your expenses. Let's pull that up. And you can see here, this is where you create an expense. Categorize, description, the amount, the customer, so forth. We'll X out of that. We'll get back to this menu. Your team for payroll, timesheets, adding an employee and whatnot, and other bank deposit, journal entry, pay down credit card, inventory quantity adjustment, and on and on. So that is this. Just one thing I'd like to point out. If you notice at the bottom of each list for customers, you can add a customer here, add a vendor here, add a contractor here, and add a product and service here. Let's just take a look at one of these. We'll add a vendor. We won't actually add it, but we'll show you what it looks like. Here's a screen. It's a similar concept to adding a customer. You just have the information, the contact information here, address, notes and attachment. Here's your payment information, additional info. Here you can place the vendor's EIN and hit track payments for 1099. This is a great feature and something you definitely want to do here. It makes life much easier at the end of the year. And then we would hit save. And the vendor would be added. We'll we'll exit without saving. The final menu here you see the gear icon upper right? Let's hit that. And we'll go into the information about your company, some lists, tools, and profile. The company, this is your accounts and settings. Here's your managed users. This is where you would grant access to your account or permissions. Chart of accounts, very important. We'll do a separate video on the chart of accounts. These are the accounts or the buckets where we place our transactions. List, products and services, custom field, tags and rules, tools for importing and exporting, budgeting, audit log, reconciliation, and then profile, subscriptions and billing, and so forth. Okay, well now that we've looked at the dashboard and the three menus, let's dive into the system. Let's start with the banking transactions. We'll go up to this one. Now, a couple things I want to say. The automated data feeds are, number one, really simple to set up with your bank. Basically, the client needs their login credentials, they're with the bank, and the QuickBooks Online will guide them through just a few steps to hook them up and connect the data feed. Now, again, remember we're in Craig's Landscaping. We're in a sample company here, and they happen to have one checking, one savings, and one credit card account. Now, many companies, or some companies I should say, will have more than just their one basic business checking account. They may have a separate checking for payroll and perhaps even a separate checking for taxes, savings, and then credit cards. Could have one or two or three or as many credit cards as you have that are strictly for business purposes, and connect them all here. And when you come in, you just want to update, because this will bring in the transactions that have occurred from the bank since the last time you updated. Now you may be asking, okay, well, what's next? Well, if I scroll down, here are all the transactions that have come in. And you can see here we've got 25 for review. And here they are, and we just need to, you see the green here? This is where the system is saying, it's either suggesting a category, or in this case, it's saying, look, we found a match. And so if you agree, you just hit match. Or if you have to do a little research and then agree, you just hit match for each transaction once you've investigated it. This is really where the rubber meets the road, in my opinion. We've all heard the concept or the philosophy of garbage in, garbage out. And if we're relying on our financial reports to make better informed business decisions for taxes, for external financing, for compliance and regulatory concerns, then we want that information, the output, to be correct. But if we happen to be messing up in this area, in other words, for instance, putting transactions in the wrong account, duplicating, not putting a transaction anywhere, so to speak, keeping them as uncategorized, and the list goes on, then we do have an issue, because if our input's bad, then, of course, as you know, our output suffers tremendously. So this is a very important area. It's very simple, and the system actually does quite a bit of the work for you. One of the good things here is you see up here on this menu here, receipts, reconcile, rules, you can actually set up rules. So for instance, Home Depot, let's say that you buy your supplies there and you could tell the system, hey, every time you see a Home Depot transaction come in, go ahead and categorize it as supplies. Or let's say you build a product or a product line and one of your vendors for raw materials is XYZ company. You could tell the system or create a rule, hey, every time you see money spent or going out to XYZ company, go ahead and categorize that as cost of goods sold or inventory or expense or whatever it might be. That way, what will happen is the system will actually, instead of uncategorized expense, and we're just assuming, let's say this is XYZ over here, instead of saying uncategorized expense, it'll in green say cost of goods sold or whatever account we have created the rule with, whatever account we want those transactions, that the transactions of that type to go into, and then all we would do is hit add. So it just makes things a lot quicker. What I found to be really helpful is to keep up with this. In other words, come in once a week or twice a week or however often you do come into the QuickBooks Online, update it, make sure you bring in the most recent transactions, and then actually sit down and do this. Why? Because the transactions are much easier to remember, of course, if it just happened recently versus months ago. And the second thing is if you're not categorizing the transactions consistently, then one day you'll open this up and there'll be hundreds and hundreds of transactions and it'll just be overwhelming, and that's just ripe fertile ground for errors and mistakes and trying to wing it, and that'll produce bad results. Okay, so let's move along here. Let's run over to the left menu. We'll go to sales and let's check out the invoice situation, and then we'll take a peek at the expenses. Here are the invoices, and here's a replication or the same information we saw on the dashboard regarding how much of our invoices are unpaid, of that what's overdue, what's been deposited, what's not deposited. And if we scroll down, we have the customers, and we can see just a snapshot here of what the status is. If we need to drill in and find out a little bit more information, we can just click on it. And then we can see here the invoice activity, when it's open, sent, viewed, paid, deposited. Now if we go to the expenses, here we can see all of our expenses for here are the dates of the last 12 months. And you can, just a couple things, it'll give us the date, the credit card expense, the category, and of course this nice drop down. It can be changed if you find there's an error here. The amount, and then you can view the expense. And what will happen here, this will take you to the screen where you actually input your expense. So this will be all the information here. You can, if it needs to be edited or whatever, it can be done here. But that gives you a general idea of the expenses. And here, let's just take a look if you want to look at your vendors. We've done that already, so we'll skip that. Contractors, I don't think Craig, oh yeah, they do have one. They have an insurance agency. Mileage, and of course your 1099 filing. Let's get back to the invoice situation real quick. I realized when I did the expense, when I pulled up the actual expense where it was created, I realized I didn't do that for the invoice. I just want to show that we can do that from this menu as well. Here we saw that we could pull up the, here's Cookies by Kathy. We can pull up that information, but what if we want to see the invoice? Maybe we need to edit it. We can just hit edit. And here's the original invoice that we created if we're doing our invoices or creating our invoices within QuickBooks. Okay, and then we can just X out. Oh, and if you need to make changes, we can make changes here. All right, now let's go to the final section of our tour today, and that is, drumroll, reports. This is personally my favorite section. As you can see here, there's a few favorites already listed for Craig's landscaping, and that's accounts receivable aging, balance sheet, and the P&L, profit and loss. Let's take a look at a few of these. I just want to give you a brief overview, and I promise I'll stay out of or try to stay out of the weeds and the rabbit holes. Now, here's the AR aging summary, the accounts receivable, 1 to 30, 31 to 60, and 61 to 90 days. We can see what's what, our totals, and it's a good snapshot, especially if we're having any kind of a cash flow concerns that we need to get the money that's due us in quicker, that kind of thing. Let's go back to the report list, take a peek at the balance sheet. Now the balance sheet, I found that a lot of my clients, they don't get excited, or they don't get too excited about the balance sheet, but it's a great tool. And it's you see where it says as of December 9th, whenever we run the report, that's a snapshot of the health of our business at that particular moment. And it's good to know how we're doing in our bank accounts, current assets, fixed assets, liabilities, and equity, both current liabilities and long-term liabilities, what we have and what we owe, the equity. This report is used extensively by CPAs, by the IRS, by any outsider looking in to your business. Outside looking in, they will take a strong look. If you're seeking external financing, compliance and regulatory, this is a report. And so the information, like we talked about back in the bank transactions and categorization, that's why it's so important to make sure that we're doing that step correctly so our results, which are these reports, are accurate. Let's look at the P&L. This is everyone's favorite. Here you can see we have the income, and then so you have a total income, then you have the cost of goods sold, your gross profit, then all your expenses, on and on. Finally, net income, $1,642, and that is for the period, really the whole year, except for the final days of the fourth quarter. And here we have the drop-down menu. You can pretty much choose whatever term you're looking for. You might say, what about last month? How did we do? So here we have November 1st to 11/30, and we just run the report. And we can say, okay, well, we lost money last month. And another really cool feature of the reports, in my view, is what I'm going to show you here. You see over here on the right of the report, the totals. You can hover over any of these and then drill down or click into it and drill down into find all the transactions that comprise that total. In other words, it brings up a transaction report, and I think it's really useful as far as you can identify and fix errors in here. In other words, we're in an income account. See all the invoices, and what if we saw an expense item in here? Say a cost of goods sold or just an operating expense item, then we would know, hey, wait a second, that was miscategorized. It doesn't belong in there. We can also drill down further and go into the actual transaction. In other words, here we're clicked on the invoice. We're going to pull up the invoice, and then we can see whether it's an invoice or an expense item for any of one of these transactions. I think all of that is really useful, and it helps identify and fix errors. It helps getting your ducks in a row regarding documentation for your CPA and or tax professional, or in the unfortunate event of an audit. It helps you get organized and prepared for that. And bottom line, I think it just helps you analyze various money in and money out aspects of your business. And again, it works for all the reports. One of the other great things about QuickBooks Online, in my opinion anyways. There's a lot of other reports we can do. We can, as far as if we want to look at P&L, we can do it by customer, by month, by group. We can do a comparison between two periods, for instance, week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter, or year over year. We can do a little bit more detail, on and on. If we have multiple locations and we have the right version of QuickBooks Online, we can compare profitability of locations. We can compare profitability of product lines and make decisions based on that information. And then let's just take a look at some of the other reports. Who owes you? This is all great information. Customer balances, accounts receivable, aging detail. We saw the summary, but there's a detail. Sales and customers, everything you ever wanted to know about your customers. Again, remember that all these reports, they're only as good as the information that was input into the system. What you owe. So you've got who owes you, sales and customers, and then what you owe. And then expenses and vendors, everything you ever wanted to know there. Sales tax, your employees, and then for your accountant, and of course, payroll. All right. Well, I hope you found this brief QuickBooks Online overview helpful. If so, please give it a like and feel free to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more like this. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or if you have any suggestions about what else you'd like for me to cover, drop a comment below or reach out to me directly at rick@mckeebookkeepingservices.com. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.